7 Faces of Temptation, How Cinema's Devils Embody the Deadly Sins. First time I encountered the concept of the 7 deadly sins. It was not in Sunday school or a medieval text, but in David Fincher's film Seven. The film's methodical killer, using pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth as his blueprint for murder, introduced me to these ancient categorizations of human weakness. Years later, I realized something fascinating. Cinema's most compelling devils each tend to embody one of these sins in their approach to temptation and corruption. When we see Satan on screen, we are not just watching a villain. We are witnessing a mirror held up to our own darkest impulses, carefully tailored to resonate with our most vulnerable points. The devil, in his many cinematic incarnations, serves as both antagonist and analyst, revealing the fractured lines in our moral architecture through temptations precisely calibrated to our deepest desires. What makes the 7 deadly sins framework so revelatory for understanding these portrayals is how it exposes the visceral psychology underlying each temptation. These are not abstract theological concepts, but rather the essential grammar of human weakness, a taxonomy of our darkest desires that filmmakers have intuited and exploited to create devils that haunt us long after the credits roll. And the first devil who comes to haunt is the pride. Pride, the devil as intellectual seducer.
Lucifer. This world is mine in time.
This quiet rebuke comes from Peter Stormare's Satan in Constantine, a portrayal that perfectly embodies the sin of pride. Appearing in an immaculate white suit with tar-stained bare feet, Stormare's Lucifer does not announce his presence with apocalyptic fanfare, but with the cold confidence of someone who does not need to prove his power. He simply exists as the inexorable conclusion to all human striving. What makes Stormare's brief performance so captivating is how much he communicates in just 5 minutes of screen time. His devil shifts rapidly between cruel playfulness, quiet menace, and something almost like respect for Constantine's cleverness. When he realizes Constantine has orchestrated events to force a favor from him, his reaction is not rage but professional acknowledgement, one operator recognizing another's good move. The subtle way Stormare licks Constantine's face communicates volumes. This is a being who savors the taste of human desperation with the refined palate of a connoisseur. His movements combine feline grace with reptilian precision, each gesture deliberate, conserving energy like a predator who knows his prey has nowhere to run. Stormare's Satan works so brilliantly because he embodies pride in its most seductive form, intellectual superiority. His devil does not need to be physically imposing because his power lies in knowing better, seeing further, and understanding more deeply than the humans he encounters. When Constantine reveals his suicidal plan, Stormare delivers his lines with the faintest hint of a smile, suggesting that pride in his opponent's intelligence is the closest thing to joy this devil can experience. This devil's pride manifests not as boastfulness but as weary condescension, a being who has seen every human scheme, understood every human motivation, and remains perpetually unimpressed. His quiet hello, John, carries more menace than any thunderous arrival precisely because it suggests intimate knowledge, the ultimate violation of privacy by a being who has been studying your every move. Pride was Lucifer's original sin, the belief that he deserved more than God had given him. In Stormare's performance, we see that pride calcified into a kind of cosmic arrogance that is simultaneously repellent and magnetic. His devil does not shout or threaten. He does not need to. The true horror lies in his certainty, the absolute conviction that he understands the cosmic order better than its creator. The genius of this portrayal is that it makes pride look attractive even as it reveals its hollowness. When Stormare tells Constantine you are going home, there is both cruelty and something approaching tenderness in his voice, the terrible seduction of pride as intellectual rebellion against divine law. We feel the pull of this devil because he offers what humans secretly crave, not just pleasure or power, but understanding, the forbidden fruit of knowledge that has tempted us since Eden. As we shift from intellectual pride to material desire, we encounter another compelling portrayal of evil that speaks to our acquisitive nature and the belief that everything has its price. Greed, the devil as cosmic businessman.
I will give you what you want. I will tell you what I want.
When Black Phillip finally speaks to Thomason in Robert Eggers' The Witch, he frames their interaction as a transaction. This devil, unlike others, does not demand worship or subservience. He proposes a business deal, embodying the sin of greed in its most fundamental form, the belief that everything has its price. Set in 1630s New England, This folk horror follows a devout Puritan family exiled to an isolated homestead. When crops fail and a baby vanishes, paranoia and religious hysteria tear the family apart. The family's goat, Black Phillip, becomes increasingly significant as their situation deteriorates. Throughout most of the film, Black Phillip exists as a disruptive presence, headbutting the family patriarch, making strange noises at night, allegedly speaking to the youngest daughter, Mercy. The goat functions as both a literal disruption to the family's already difficult life and a metaphorical embodiment of their mounting distrust and paranoia. When the family begins to fracture under the weight of unexplained tragedy, the goat watches with an intelligence that seems to border on satisfaction. By the film's conclusion, when Thomasin encounters Black Phillip in human form in the goat shed, the scene acquires an almost liturgical weight. The barely visible gentleman with one goat leg still intact asks her in a gentle voice that seems to materialize directly in her mind,
"Wouldst thou like the taste of butter, a pretty dress? Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?"
The genius of this temptation lies in its terrible intimacy and perfect calibration. After watching her entire family perish, after being accused of witchcraft herself, Thomasin does not need grand promises of power or wealth. She needs butter, the simple pleasure of fat on her tongue after months of starvation. She needs a pretty dress, some small affirmation of beauty and worth in a world that has offered her nothing but accusations and loss. The scene works on multiple psychological levels. As historical realism, women in 17th century witch trials often confess to being tempted by Satan with simple comforts like butter or new clothing. As trauma response, the desperate desire for small pleasures after extreme suffering, and as a perfect embodiment of greed, not as excessive wanting, but as fair exchange, the foundation of all commerce. What makes Black Phillip so unsettling is that his offer is eminently reasonable. What does Puritan morality offer Thomasin but starvation, suspicion, and the death of her entire family? The devil's way, at least, includes butter, the sweet taste of indulgence after a lifetime of bitter restraint. When she signs his book and follows him naked into the woods to join the witch's Sabbath, her decision carries both liberation and damnation in the same breath. And that is why I think this movie will still linger with you a while, even after watching it, because you know she is free, but at the same time she is doomed for eternity. This portrayal of the devil works because it strikes at the heart of human greed itself, the belief that anything can be commodified, that every human need or desire represents a potential transaction. Black Phillip does not need to force Thomasin. He simply needs to offer better terms than God has. When she rises, laughing, to join the witches hovering among the trees, we feel the terrible exhilaration of her choice. The intoxicating freedom of selling what you have been told is priceless for the simple pleasures you have been denied. From material transactions, we now move to a devil who seduces through beauty and sensual pleasure, appealing to our desire for aesthetic and physical gratification. Lust, the devil as aesthetic seduction. The sin of lust extends beyond mere sexual desire to encompass a broader hunger for sensory pleasure and beauty. Few devils embody this aspect more completely than Tim Curry's darkness in Ridley Scott's Legend. In this fantasy film, pure-hearted Jack must save both Princess Lily and the last unicorns from the Lord of Darkness, who seeks to create eternal night. Tim Curry's devil is a striking visual creation. With massive curled horns, crimson skin, gleaming white teeth, and impressively muscled physique, Curry's devil is a monument to sensual excess. Every aspect of his design by makeup artist Rob Bottin seems calculated to evoke both attraction and repulsion simultaneously. His entrance, emerging slowly from a mirror amid smoke and firelight, is one of cinema's most visually arresting introductions, a birth of darkness that feels almost pornographic in its deliberate pacing and visual excess. Curry does not just look the part. His performance vibrates with sensual energy. His voice alternately purrs and thunders as he attempts to seduce Princess Lily, caressing words like innocence and purity with almost tactile pleasure. When he says,
"We are all animals, my lady,"
the line drips with both menace and invitation, a devil who understands that the barrier between pleasure and pain is permeable, perhaps even illusory. What makes this portrayal so effective is how it embodies lust as aesthetic principle rather than mere carnal desire. Darkness does not just want to corrupt Lily sexually. He wants to convert her to his aesthetic philosophy, to make her recognize the beauty in darkness, the pleasure in transgression. The entire film is structured around visual contrasts, daylight versus shadow, unicorns versus goblins, innocence versus experience. Curry's devil represents the seductive pull of the latter categories, the recognition that light only exists in relation to darkness, that beauty requires shadow to be fully appreciated. When darkness tempts Lily, touching her face with his massive red hand, the contrast between his crimson skin and her pale features creates a composition worthy of a Renaissance painting. The scene works because it makes darkness look beautiful, not despite its terrifying aspects, but because of them. The devil here functions as an aesthetic alternative to the film's otherwise straightforward moral universe, suggesting that evil might not be just the absence of good, but a competing form of beauty with its own internal logic and appeal. This approach to the devil as sensual seducer has historical precedent. In 1842, Belgian sculptor Joseph Jeeves created Legénie du Mal, the genius of evil, for St. Paul's Cathedral in Liege. The sculpture depicted Lucifer as a beautiful young man with delicate chains and bat wings, his expression one of melancholy contemplation. Church authorities quickly removed it, declaring it too beautiful and seductive to remain in a place of worship. They worried this handsome Satan would distract young women from their prayers, and judging by Curry's performance, they were right to be concerned. Legend succeeds because it recognizes that temptation works through beauty, not despite it. When darkness offers Lily a black dress that transforms her into a dark reflection of herself, the costume is not just symbolically significant, it is genuinely gorgeous, making evil look like a compelling aesthetic choice rather than a moral failure. As she gazes at her transformed reflection, we understand the temptation not through didactic dialogue, but through pure visual seduction. Lust in this context becomes not just desire for flesh, but hunger for beauty untempered by moral constraints. It is the sin of allowing ourselves to be led astray by what looks good rather than what is good, a distinction Curry's devil exploits with devastating effectiveness, reminding us that the road to damnation is often paved with exquisite visual pleasures. While the previous devils tempt through beauty or material offers, our next figure embodies the corrosive power of resentment, showing how envy can transform into a cosmic grievance. Envy, the devil as resentful outcast.
I used to be in heaven. I used to be an angel.
Viggo Mortensen's understated Lucifer in the prophecy speaks these words with quiet resentment, perfectly capturing the sin of envy. The film depicts a war in heaven, with renegade angel Gabriel seeking to overthrow God's order. When Viggo Mortensen's Lucifer finally appears, he is an unexpected wild card in this heavenly conflict, pursuing his own agenda. Appearing over an hour into the film with slicked back hair and a black coat, Mortensen crafts a devil who is subdued, restrained, and unsettlingly reasonable. What makes this portrayal so compelling is its focus on Satan's resentment toward God and angels rather than his hatred of humanity. This devil does not rage against creation. He mourns his exclusion from it. When he explains his opposition to the angel Gabriel's plan, Mortensen delivers the line with an almost weary resignation. I have been in heaven, I have been in hell, I have been caught between them. None of it compares to the suffering I experience in proximity to humans. Envy manifests in Mortensen's performance through subtle physical cues, the way he occasionally glances upward when mentioning heaven, the bitter edge in his voice when discussing Gabriel. This is not a devil who revels in evil. It is one who resents being cast out from goodness and refuses to let others take what he believes should have been his. The brilliance of the performance lies in making Satan's motivation comprehensible without making it sympathetic. We understand his envy without endorsing it. The scene where Mortensen's Lucifer confronts Gabriel crystallizes this dynamic perfectly. Their exchange is not the shouting match one might expect between cosmic adversaries, but a tense, pointed conversation between former brothers in arms. The familiarity between them suggests a shared history that predates human existence, making their conflict feel personal rather than merely symbolic. When Lucifer finally rips out Gabriel's heart, it feels less like violence and more like settling an ancient score, the ultimate act of envy made flesh. What makes this portrayal work so effectively is how it connects Satan's envy to human experience. We all know what it means to be excluded, to watch others enjoy what we have been denied. Mortensen's devil functions as the cosmic embodiment of that universal feeling, the ultimate outsider who can never rejoin the community that rejected him. His pain feels genuine despite his malevolence, creating a complex portrayal that transcends simplistic notions of evil. The film's genius lies in positioning this envious devil not as the primary antagonist but as an unexpected ally to the protagonists. He opposes Gabriel not out of goodness, but because he does not want heaven transformed into another hell. There is a strange integrity to this devil. He knows his role in the cosmic order and seems almost protective of the boundaries between realms, even as he resents them. Envy in this portrayal is not just wanting what others have. It is the corrosive certainty that what they have should rightfully be yours. This portrayal works because it humanizes evil without excusing it. Mortensen's Lucifer is not a cackling demon, but a being consumed by resentment so profound it has become his defining characteristic. His envy has crystallized into a kind of cosmic entitlement that justifies any action, no matter how horrific. In this way, he reflects one of the darkest aspects of human nature, our capacity to feel so aggrieved by perceived injustice that we become the very thing we claim to stand against. Moving from the spiritual hunger of envy, we encounter a devil whose appetite is more literal yet equally profound, one who consumes not just bodies but souls with casual indifference. Gluttony, the devil's insatiable consumer. In the 2014 released movie Winter's Tale follows a thief with miraculous abilities who falls in love with a dying woman. Will Smith's brief but memorable appearance as Lou occurs when he converses with his demonic underling Pearly Soames. While Will Smith's understated devil in Winter's Tale might seem an odd choice to represent gluttony, his portrayal suggests a cosmic hunger that goes beyond mere food. Simply referred to as Lou, Smith appears in just 2 scenes wearing nothing more extraordinary than a t-shirt and blazer, yet manages to convey an entity with an insatiable appetite for souls. What makes this portrayal so striking is precisely its banality. In a film filled with flying horses, magical tuberculosis, and holographic constellations projected from jewelry, Smith's devil stands out because of his ordinariness. He does not need horns or fire. His power lies in his endless consumption of human potential. When he speaks with his demonic underling Pearly Soames, there is a casual cruelty to his manner, as if he is discussing collecting items for a hobby rather than destroying lives. Demon, he tells Soames with the nonchalance of a corporate executive checking quarterly results, "Let us get this over with." This line delivery, weary, slightly bored, yet focused, perfectly captures gluttony's essential nature. True gluttony is not passionate consumption, but consumption that has become so routine it no longer provides satisfaction, only momentary relief from an emptiness that can never be filled. The genius of Smith's performance lies in one brief moment where he demonstrates his power, transforming momentarily into something inhuman. In this fleeting glimpse, we see the monstrous hunger beneath the casual exterior, a hunger that has consumed countless souls yet remains eternally unsatisfied. His devil is not evil because he enjoys destruction. He is evil because he cannot stop consuming, even when consumption brings no joy. This portrayal suggests that gluttony in its most profound form is not about eating too much food, but about consuming without purpose or need, taking simply because you can. Smith's devil does not seem to gain anything concrete from the souls he claims. He simply does not want others to have them. It is consumption as territoriality, as cosmic hoarding, the ultimate expression of mine extended beyond material possessions to human souls themselves. The understated nature of this performance makes it all the more effective. In the film's universe, where magical occurrences are treated with operatic intensity, the devil's mundane appearance becomes genuinely unsettling. Evil here is not dramatic or theatrical. It is a middle manager in a t-shirt and blazer, dispassionately overseeing the machinery of damnation. This portrayal suggests that the true face of evil in the modern world is not the monstrous, but the bureaucratic, systems of consumption so vast and impersonal that no one individual feels responsible for their consequences. Smith's devil works precisely because he embodies the spiritual emptiness at the heart of consumer culture, the promised satisfaction that never arrives, the hunger that only grows with feeding. His portrayal reminds us that gluttony's true horror is not excess but the hollowness that drives it, a void trying to fill itself with things that can never satisfy. In this way, his devil becomes a perfect metaphor for our age of conspicuous consumption, where having more rarely translates to feeling fulfilled. From the casual consumption of souls, we now turn to more deliberate and calculating evil, one whose patient vengeance carries the devastating power of calculated wrath. Wrath, the devil as vengeful judge. If there is one cinematic devil who perfectly embodies the sin of wrath, it is the Japanese stranger in Na Hong Jin's The Wailing. In this South Korean horror film, mysterious deaths plague a small village following the arrival of a Japanese stranger. As the protagonist's daughter falls ill with the same affliction affecting the villagers, fear and suspicion mount into desperate action. In this movie, the devil does not announce himself with fanfare. He exists in the margins of the story until his terrifying revelation in a dark cave. Throughout the film, strange deaths plague a small Korean village. The protagonist, a policeman named Jong-gu, becomes convinced that a mysterious Japanese man is responsible. As his daughter falls ill with the same affliction affecting other villagers, Jong-gu's fear and suspicion escalate into desperate action. What makes this devil so effective is the deliberate way the film builds to his revelation. For most of the runtime, we see him only as a silent figure photographing death scenes or foraging in the forest. His foreignness in the small Korean community already marks him as an outsider, but the film carefully avoids confirming or denying his supernatural nature until it does not. When he finally reveals his true nature to Priest, the transformation is horrifyingly subtle. There is no elaborate special effect, just a shift in posture, a change in his eyes, and suddenly we are looking at something ancient and malevolent that has been hiding in plain sight. The scene carries such impact because it confirms our worst suspicions while simultaneously exceeding them. This is not just a malevolent human, but something that transcends humanity altogether. This devil represents wrath in its most calculated form, not hot-headed anger but cold, patient vengeance. He does not just kill. He orchestrates elaborate torments that turn family members against each other and corrupt innocent souls. His punishment extends beyond his victims to everyone they love, a rippling effect of devastation that spreads like poison through the community. What makes the Wailing's devil particularly terrifying is his methodical approach. Unlike devils who tempt through promises or seduction, this entity works through confusion, deception, and misdirection. He creates scenarios where humans destroy themselves and each other through their own fear and suspicion. When Jong-gu must make a crucial decision, whether to trust a mysterious woman or the Japanese stranger, the devil has already ensured that either choice leads to destruction. The film's brilliance lies in how it connects supernatural evil to xenophobia and cultural fear. The devil appears as a Japanese man in a Korean village, exploiting historical tensions between the two cultures to further his aims. This adds a layer of social commentary to the supernatural horror, how easily suspicion of the other can blind us to genuine threats, or worse, make us complicit in them. The cave scene where the devil reveals himself stands as one of cinema's most chilling moments, not because of elaborate special effects or dramatic music, but because of the absolute conviction in the actor's performance. When his face transforms, it is through subtle muscle movements rather than prosthetics or computer-generated imagery. The effect is more unnerving precisely because it feels physiologically possible, as though we are watching a mask of humanity slip to reveal something ancient and terrible beneath. This devil functions as wrath incarnate, not just his own wrath, but his ability to provoke it in others. By the film's conclusion, the entire village has been consumed by suspicion and violence. The devil's true power is not just killing but corrupting, turning good people against each other until they destroy themselves in fear and rage. This portrayal reminds us that wrath is contagious, that rage spreads and multiplies, becoming a force that eventually consumes even those who believe they are fighting against it. Finally, we arrive at perhaps the most insidious form of evil, one that does not actively destroy, but simply denies the very purpose of existence itself. Sloth, the devil as nihilistic void.
There is no God, no universe, no human race, no earthly life, no heaven, no hell. It is all a dream, a grotesque and foolish dream.
The claymation devil from the Adventures of Mark Twain delivers these lines with quiet certainty, embodying not just spiritual laziness but a complete abdication of meaning itself, the ultimate expression of sloth. Based on Twain's unfinished work, The Mysterious Stranger, this segment from the film shows 3 children encountering a being who calls himself an angel named Satan. This Satan does not tempt or threat. He simply reveals the emptiness behind existence. His face, a mask held by one hand that constantly shifts and changes, perfectly embodies the unstable nature of reality he describes. This visual metaphor, a face that is merely a mask held up by its wearer, becomes the physical manifestation of the nihilism he preaches. Identity itself is merely performance, a temporary arrangement with no substance behind it. What makes this sequence so disturbing, particularly for what was marketed as children's entertainment, is its philosophical weight. In just under 6 minutes of screen time, this clay devil articulates a nihilism so complete it makes cosmic horror writers like Lovecraft seem optimistic by comparison. When he tells the children watching his demonstration, "You are but a thought, wandering forlorn among the empty eternities," the line delivers an existential gut punch rarely felt in animation. The sequence shows him creating a tiny clay village populated with little people, allowing them to live and build a community, only to destroy them all while explaining that nothing matters. The visual of these tiny clay figures desperately reaching upward as they are extinguished carries a primal horror that transcends the film's technical limitations. We watch as they plead for mercy, only to be told they do not actually exist. They are merely thoughts in a vacant cosmos. What makes this portrayal so disturbing is that it is not evil in any traditional sense. This devil does not want souls or worship. He does not even seem to enjoy the suffering he causes. He simply embodies the cosmic truth that Mark Twain himself was wrestling with late in life, that perhaps the universe is indifferent to human existence, that our lives and deaths are meaningless except for the significance we temporarily assign them. Sloth, in its theological conception, goes beyond mere physical laziness to encompass spiritual apathy, a failure to develop one's spiritual self or to care about moral questions. This claymation devil represents sloth in its purest form, the belief that because nothing ultimately matters, no effort toward goodness or meaning is worthwhile. The true terror in his revelation is not that evil exists, but that good and evil might be equally meaningless, mere constructs in a universe that will eventually forget all human striving. When the devil tells the children life itself is only a vision, a dream, his words carry particular weight because they come from Twain's own writings. The author, who experienced significant personal tragedies including the deaths of his wife and multiple children, struggled with existential questions throughout his later works. This devil gives voice to the darkest of those questions. What if existence itself is merely a cruel joke with no punchline? The genius of this portrayal is that it makes nihilism itself the ultimate evil, not because it is morally wrong, but because it undermines the very possibility of morality. A devil who tells you to sin can be resisted, but a devil who tells you convincingly that resistance is meaningless attacks the very foundation of human purpose. By suggesting that nothing, not love, not sacrifice, not cruelty, not kindness, has any cosmic significance, this devil commits the ultimate act of sloth, the complete abandonment of the struggle to make meaning in an indifferent universe. The sequence's power comes from its visual simplicity and philosophical complexity. When the devil disappears at the end, leaving the children and the audience in stunned silence, we are left with no comforting resolution. Unlike most film devils who are eventually defeated or at least opposed, this one simply states his case and vanishes, his absence reinforcing his message that existence itself might be equally temporary and pointless. This portrayal reminds us that perhaps the greatest sin is not doing wrong but doing nothing, the failure to engage with meaningful questions about existence, even when the answers remain eternally uncertain. The ultimate sloth is not physical laziness but existential surrender, and this quietly devastating devil embodies that surrender more effectively than any fire and brimstone monster ever could. Through these 7 portrayals, we see not just the evolution of the devil in cinema, but a profound exploration of human weakness. These compelling performances show us that the most frightening evils are not supernatural but deeply human. The intellectual arrogance of Stormare's Satan, the transactional nature of Black Phillip, the aesthetic seduction of Curry's darkness, the bitter resentment of Mortensen's Lucifer, the casual consumption of Smith's Lou, the patient vengeance of the Japanese stranger, and the nihilistic void of the claymation Satan. Each holds up a mirror to our own potential for sin, reminding us that the most effective devils are not those who threaten, but those who understand us all too well.